how did you guys get, okay, we're going to do Wizards? Did they call you?
Peter,
what happened?
we had worked...
Peter Marietta, everybody.
We had worked with Peter on a show called Ask Harriet, and it had been several years before we ever did Friends or anything. And but we had stayed in touch with Peter, and we would see him when he was on Jesse. We were on Friends, and we were all in the same building.
And who else was on Jesse?
And
me.
Yeah, David Dillon.
Everyone's like, who?
And anyway, and so then he was doing Wizards, and he called us up and said, "Do you want to do this?" And we were like, "We'd love to work with you
God
again."
You said yes.
Yeah.
And I guess he all the writers that were on the show were all from like primetime sitcom.
Yeah, but you
they
could
weren't
tell.
from Disney Channel shows.
You could tell us because the thing was, and we spoke about this a little bit before we started, is how what I so respected about you guys is you didn't and not to dispel any other Disney shows, but a lot of other shows had writers that just came from a long line of Disney shows, and they kind of were like, oh, this is the genre, we're just going to write to the genre of Disney Channel. And you guys never did that. You always went, how can we elevate? How can we make this better?
When we came to Disney Channel, our thing was like, we're not going to approach a kid show any different than we do
Why would you?
an adult show.
Thank God.
Right.
You need strong emotion. You need your jokes to come from character.
Yeah.
And
You have to care.
Really
I don't
great,
mean to interrupt
really
you, Gigi, but if you don't care about the characters, then who gives a fuck?
Exactly.
And you know what I've heard so much because of that, like work and desire to elevate and not approach it like a Disney Channel show, is that I've heard from so many parents of Wizards was one of the few shows I could watch and enjoy with them.
We heard that 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
I have friends who said, she was like, I walked into the room and the kids weren't there, but my husband was watching.
Yeah,
Wizards.
I love that.
I mean, and that was intentional. We were like, we want this to be a show, parents can watch. And also, we'd have little things in the show, like, we call Mr. Laritate was one of the teachers, principal, I think. And that's Laritate is referring to a show from, the 60s.
Bewitched, right?
Bewitched, that maybe a parent might have seen in reruns.
I think a lot of times in Pixar movies, they appeal to the audience, the grown-ups and the kids.
But
and I
that's
think
just
we
a smart
did that
move
a lot.
because obviously that group of people, it's a family experience. They're going to be together. Now, I have to ask, what was your experience on Friends? I think people are going to be pissed if we don't bring that up.
Well, Friends was a great experience for us because you break so many stories on that show that was where we really cut our teeth on just breaking story after story. And I think that's why we ended up like running the story room at Friends. And that's why like Peter and Ben and Vinny were just like,
Wizards.
go. I mean, Wizards, right. I'm sorry. Not at Friends, but at Wizards, because they were like, you guys go, because we just had a bit of a sixth sense about how long, where the act breaks need to be, what was going to get through the network. And we had a discipline about it because, being on that show, like we worked till really late at night.
The writers were passionate. I mean, everyone was very young, single, didn't really need to go home, and you just live there. Live
and
there.
late at night can be 3 in the morning, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We hit the
morning
rush hour going home.
Oh shit!
Now and then, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I do remember when I was doing Jesse with Peter and Bright Kaufman Crane was also the producers of that, as they were friends. And there's two things. They would shoot, you guys would shoot till like 2, 3 in the morning, right?
Yeah.
And in between,
the audience would be let go maybe around 11.
Oh, that's so nice of you to let them
let
go.
the audience go maybe 11:30. Yeah, and then we'd stick around and let's go back.
There'd also be a line, and as audience members leave, new members would come in.
Oh
Yeah, it was
makes
amazing.
sense, though. It was such a phenomenon.
It was similar. Wizards and Friends were similar with the passionate audience.
Yeah.
And those are two shows I think that had that.
And there's something that happens in most sitcoms, but I think a lot in Friends, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but alternates. You'd have one of the actors say a joke, and then take two, they'd say a different joke, or you'd rewrite. And this is just me as an actor. You'd fucking rewrite the entire scene in between takes.
Oh God, yeah. Well, that was why sometimes you let the audience go, and then you have to shoot. Like maybe you might redo a scene, like what you're saying. Yeah.
I mean, it's really hard because a lot of times in between scenes, like take 1, take 2. Now everybody comes in and goes, "Okay, David, you don't say that. Now you say this, and then you say that. And this is the lead for that." And you're like, "I can't remember anything. I don't even know who I am right now."
Yeah, no, and I don't love
so
doing that because I don't think it's that fair to the to the actors. Like, but if a joke doesn't work, you can fly in a second. You can find a joke.
Friends was pretty popular.
But what was the latest that you had to stay for Wizards? Because I know Deloise and I have talked about how it was nice for the adults because it was a kids show, so the hours weren't so bad. But I know that wasn't always true for the writers.
Right. It was generally really great for us. And that was part of it was, So when I showed up at Wizards, and I told you this, I remember meeting Mandy Tiffy, Selena's mom, and I was like, "Oh, I have kids too." And she's like, "Oh, how old are your kids?" And I was like, 1 and wait for it, 2. Aww. And I have 1 and a 2-year-old, and I was like, I'm not staying here till 4 a.m. I'll quit.
It's not possible.
It's too important to me to be home with my kids.
Yeah.
So we just came in and we said we're going to break these stories. We're going to break them properly, and because you don't have to be. What keeps you there late is when you're rewriting a whole story. If you just need to punch up some jokes, that's fun. That's easy. That's a 2-hour rewrite. And we're home for dinner. And that was generally what happened because we were so disciplined about making sure we got the story right.
You break the story, your foundation is there.
Your foundation is there. And now, sure, some jokes aren't going to work. We're not going to, that's an alchemy between like writer and actor, and actor and actor. And like some jokes aren't going to work. That's nobody's fault. And then we'll rewrite them. That's great. We love that. Writers love that rewriting jokes. But if that's all you're doing in a rewrite, that's a 2-hour rewrite.
Yeah, and we also had, we basically, the way it works in a day is you guys would be rehearsing in the morning, coming in early. So you'd be rehearsing for this basically run through, and we'd come down and get to see you guys put it on its feet.
Yeah.
And that run through was key because it was early.
Yeah.
We had it at 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock, which is very, very early.
Yeah, yeah.
So that would give us think about it. So after we see the play on its feet and we hear the feedback from whoever, if the network's there, or from ourselves.
Yeah.
Then we go ahead and rewrite, and we could, it gives you, 4 hours, and maybe get out, and get home to dinner.
And then on Wednesday we get a totally new script.
Well, because I remember,
it's good. I like that. I love that.
And how you didn't get that many totally new scripts?
No, listen. There's
he's
sometimes
very better about the 1 or 2.
Sometimes it would. We would lose, in my opinion, a joke that was good.
Right.
So then that makes you
But if it's
nail it even more
Yeah.
at the table or during the run through so that it
Would you
stays.
ever tell us that? Would you ever tell us like, hey, can we try that again? I think you would.
I don't know how many times I came into the writing room. I was always intimidated by you guys, and I think one of the big things that I experienced on Third Rock from the Sun was
he
that
mentioned directing in Third Rock every episode.
The writers and the actors a lot of times, and correct me if I'm wrong, don't even speak. Like there's a big separation between
which is such a
church
shame.
and state.
But did you feel that way on Wizards? I felt like
what I'm saying is I learned that on Third Rock from the Sun that the writers would sometimes come down while we were working on something, and John Lithgow would say, "Hey, this doesn't work. Let's do this." So you even get another run at massaging it into a better episode.
And that's very smart.
Yeah, and we did that. Just so everybody knows, we all interacted and were able to communicate. But it's very rare that I would say, "Hey, like
it's
this
kind of
worked."
That thing. Like once you give it a try, especially 2 try, like table read, and then that first run through, and if it fails twice, it's hard.
But oftentimes things
justify.
Things only got cut because of time. Like it made it work great, and it was just like we don't have time.
It did hurt a little.
I remember that.
But it's not your fault because also too, like I remember.
I feel bad.
No, but again, it's not your fault because also too, I remember like when jokes would get cut or like I would get a joke that I loved and it like hurt a little bit, but at the same time too, is I kept thinking, okay, maybe it doesn't serve the story.
Right.
Maybe it distracts from like the ultimate goal of the episode.
And that's our job as actors to take your words and make them our own and make a choice with them and make them as funny as possible.
But it
is
is
so important to let actors. Next time I run a show, just like letting the actors know 9 times out of 10, it's not because you blew it. And by the way, if we didn't like how you read the joke, then we could just give you a note. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not. It's
rarely
you. It's usually its length. Honestly,
it's so important for actors to just know in general that most of it has nothing to do with you on every aspect.
And how it's impossible to not have your feelings hurt too.
It's a weirdly personal
My
job
feelings
that
were
is
hurt
very impersonal.
when I got there. Okay. I must have a lot of staple. I do have a lot of staple Wizard story. What is one story that you typically tell that you like? What's your favorite story from Wizards?
There is a story that I tell. Why don't you go first?
Well, I just the one that pops in my head.
I can't wait.
That pops in my head. I don't know if you've told this yet, but it just cracks me up all the time. Is when we were nominated for the Emmy, and you were in the audience.
Which shoulder was
and
it?
you, being a DeLuise, you are always thinking about the joke and the pratfall you could possibly do, and so you were like, if we win,
famous last words.
I got something planned. I got something planned, guys. And guess what?
And you didn't talk him out of it.
You won, and you went running up in front of the whole cast. You went running up the steps, and you did a wonderful pratfall onto the stage, landing on your shoulder
on a marble floor.
On a marble floor, which I think you missed. Oh yeah, you missed.
There was a step.
I didn't launch myself from the stage. I launched myself from the first step. So I lost about 6 inches to do the roll, and I landed completely perpendicular on my right shoulder and shattered the collarbone.
It shattered.
That was so.
But in that moment, in this moment,
nobody knew.
Hey, thank you so much for watching this clip of Wizards of Waverly Pod. And for the full episode, go to the Wizards Pod YouTube channel. The link is in the description.
And for exclusive weekly bonus content, join our Patreon now. There's a link in the description for that too. Thanks for watching.
Bye now.